Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live with It's All About Choices, Nutrition, and Weight Loss. And today I am very happy to have each of you join me. And so if you are listening in live and tuning in live, I thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join in and take a little break, hopefully having a little lunch. And then for those who are listening to the replay, I thank you for pausing out of your busy schedule just to kind of take some time out to get some nutrition news for your mind and your body and your soul. And so today we are doing our up close and personal segment, and we have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, and her name is Miss Robin Bennett, and she brings us greetings all the way from Altamont Springs, Florida. So thank you, Robin, for taking time out of your schedule to share your personal journey and your testimony with everybody. Okay. And
Absolutely.
Robin and I, we partnered together back with One-on-One in April of 2018, and we actually go further back than that. We're both members of Rejoice in the Lord Ministries in Apopka, Florida. And, you know, even though I see her every Sunday, this is really our first time reconnecting since our time and since her transformation. And so I'm really excited to reconnect with her on this level and for you all to hear her story, because we're talking today about blood pressure, which is a story that's very near and dear to my heart. I was diagnosed in my early 30s, and she has a very similar story in that regard. And so it's definitely an important topic that we're hearing more and more about high blood pressure. And so her story is very relatable, and it is titled How Robin Finally Gained Control of Her High Blood Pressure. She reduced her medications and she lost 18.5 pounds despite trying various diet programs, boot camps, and even trying to go at it alone. So again, a very relatable story that we all have encountered some of those aspects in our own lives. And so for those who are tuning in live, and even if you're listening to the replay, definitely feel free to post any comments, any questions that you may have, and those questions will get answered, okay? And so more and more of us, again, are experiencing elevated blood pressure, or sometimes it's termed pre-hypertension, and then as well as actually being diagnosed with blood pressure or hypertension. It's still known as the silent killer because for many of us, usually there are no overt signs or symptoms. But on the flip side, though, after you get diagnosed, many of us, especially if we're really in tune with our bodies, if we eat certain things or we can feel it, like our body just kind of changes. And sometimes we can tell when our blood pressure is elevated. And so, and Robin has a very amazing story of how food is medicine, how when food is done a certain way and it giving your body the nutrients that it needs, it actually helped to lower her blood pressure. And she was able to reduce her meds and lose weight in the process. So next we are going to hear from her, Robin herself, and we will start off with her history with dieting, her weight struggles, like many of us have, and then we'll speak more about her blood pressure leading up to that official diagnosis. So, Robin, if you can share with us your line of work and what do you do for a living?
So I come from a background of working in insurance. I started off my career, and I always called it my first real job because I started off very young. I think I was 20 when I got the job, and I started in property and casualty insurance, and I stayed in that for about 8 years. During that time, I got my bachelor's and master's in human resources. So then I transferred over to doing employee benefits. So that's like going to different offices and explaining their benefits during open enrollment time. So I did that for the last 8 years. And now I've just kind of recently transitioned. I've left the insurance side and dove right into working with HR directly. So I've just accepted a new position doing human resources.
Nice. Change is always challenging, good, and sometimes stressful, right? So that's good. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so let's talk a bit about your journey with the blood pressure. So share with us the challenges, or share with us how that story led up to you actually getting the diagnosis.
So we used to, at my other job when I was doing insurance, we had a wellness plan. And in order to get certain discounts on our premiums or our payroll deductions, we had to have the nurse, we had to meet certain metrics, and we had a nurse actually come on site and do tests for us. So they went as far as like doing body fat composition, and like it was deep. And so I was very early 30s. I want to say like maybe 33, possibly somewhere around that, 32, 33. And one of they used to have us get blood tests done, and then they would go over the results. So one of the tests that I had done, they were like, "You're severely anemic." And I was like, "What?" I had no idea. So like we dealt with that. I ended up having like an ablation that kind of helped the situation, and then I was fine. It was like the next year that I was then told, well, your blood pressure, like every time we come to check your blood pressure, it's slightly elevated. And we kind of give you a pass because we're like, maybe, they almost treated it like I was a kid taking a test. Like maybe you're stressed out when we come, so maybe that's why it's high. But they noticed a pattern. And so they were like, I think you might have high blood pressure. So, we want you to go see your primary. We want you to do whatever he suggests. And I just remember kind of having kind of a mental breakdown within the office after that visit, because I'm like, every time I come to them, and ever since I hit my 30s, like, it's like my health has just gone worse and worse. And I'm like, this is what it's like to get older. Like, I keep having problems. And I felt like I was fairly healthy. And when I think of healthy, at least when I used to think of healthy, I thought of exercising. And that's really all I thought about. And I thought, I'm a consistent exerciser, so I shouldn't have these health issues. So it was a shock to get those diagnoses when they gave them to me. So that's kind of how I felt when they told me that I had the high blood pressure. And again, that was early 30s.
Okay. And so when you went to visit your primary care, what did they say? Was it like an immediate diagnosis, or did they kind of give you a few months?
So nope. He kind of dove right into it because they looked at prior visits, and like my annual visits, I didn't have to go to the doctor more than once a year to my primary. And he was like, it is like, elevated. And we've kind of just given a pass, I guess, the last couple of years. But, you're getting older. They asked about my history. And I'm like, yeah, my mother has high blood pressure. My grandmother had high blood pressure. My grandfather had high blood pressure. And so I think he might have monitored it. He wanted me to come back in probably 90 days later. And he did, like, they had done more tests, but they also took my blood pressure again. And he wanted me to monitor it at home. And it continued to be elevated. And so his suggestion, or, what he wanted me to do was get onto medication. And I am a horrible medicine taker, vitamin taker, anything. So when he diagnosed that, I'm like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. But I mean, I would go in and I wasn't taking it consistently. And then I started taking it consistently, and then it just didn't work. So that's when he decided to then prescribe a second medication. So I had to take one in the morning and one in the evening. And he had me try that out for 90 days and then go back in. And my blood pressure was stable at that point. It was where, within the range that he wanted it to be in. And I just remember thinking, I'm like going to be like an old lady,
taking a bunch of
like
meds.
A pillbox at 35. Like, that's crazy. But I remember, like, that's what he was like, that's what it's going to take. Like, you're going to need to take 2 medications, one in the morning, one in the evening, in order to keep it stable. And I didn't like that response or that answer.
And so did weight ever come up with your doctor as far as losing weight?
So he had mentioned, like, he wanted me to try to lose some pounds. He wanted me to, he did suggest like eating healthier. But again, in my mind, eating healthier was probably, like not going out to lunch 5 days a week, every day at work, maybe 3 days a week,
Okay.
and not monitoring what I was eating when I went out to the places, just
Mhm.
maybe minimize how often I went out, or lower the amount. So he did mention that, but at some point I hadn't lost, I guess, enough weight to do anything to the blood pressure. And really, again, I wasn't watching what I was eating. I
Mhm.
just was exercising more and maybe not going out as much. I wasn't
Okay.
really doing a plan.
Okay. Okay. Very similar to my story. I was around the same age and they gave me a sheet of paper and said, avoid these foods, that are high in sodium and
Mhm.
try to lose 15, 20 pounds. Come see me in 3 months. So that was pretty
Yeah,
much what I got.
yeah.
And yeah, it is amazing. And then, so share with me then, were there some things that you tried to do? Because like I didn't want to get on the pill either. I didn't want to take the pill. I was like trying to avoid it as much as possible. And were there some things that you tried to do since they gave you a pass at least 2 or 3 times within 90 days? So were you trying to do some things and on your own?
I tried. So I think I was introduced to Weight Watchers at work as well. We had some sort of program, and it was, if you lost like 10% of your weight, you got some of your money back. And I remember doing that, and that was somewhat successful. I mean, I had lost some weight, but my eating habits hadn't really, I mean, Weight Watchers kind of teaches you like, everything's a point or point system. And so, yeah, I could have that glazed donut. I just couldn't, I had to find other ways to not eat bad that day. But it didn't really stop me from eating a glazed donut or a Panera bread bagel. It didn't really stop that kind of habit.
Mhm.
Um, so that worked for like maybe the very start, because maybe it was a shock to my body of how I was eating, but it didn't last very long. And I had done multiple stints of Weight Watchers. So, 3 months, during this year, maybe 3 months, another year. So I had done it a few times. I had also tried, you see like every beginning of the year, you'll see like a gym or some kind of group say, hey, we're looking for 20 women to try this boot camp or try this program, and it's free. And then you go there and it's not free. It's, it costs, but if you lose a certain percentage of your weight, or if you lose a certain amount of pounds, then you can get your money back. And so I fell into those traps because it really didn't come with a plan. It came with workout sessions. And then kind of the same thing like the doctor did with, okay, here are things that you should try to avoid,
Mhm.
but nothing more than that.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
so I tried those things. So it was multiple like boot camp type of plans, that would last for like 60 days, and then multiple stints with Weight Watchers.
Okay, okay. And with the boot camps, were you able to lose? Do you think you were able to lose or get a handle on your blood pressure when you was monitoring at home?
So it really didn't affect my blood pressure. I did lose some pounds, but it didn't really affect my blood pressure. And really
Mhm,
the pounds, as soon as I would get off of those programs,
mhm.
I gained the weight back.
Got you. Got you.
Hmm.
Yep. And I went through that same phase too, where it's almost I have a saying where you can't outwork out a bad diet. And so I
I
would work
tried.
out.
I tried many a times.
I did too. I tried for 3 years to try to lose weight and it did not happen. It stayed. I didn't gain, but I didn't lose either. So
Yeah.
I tell you, it is real. Well, share with us your relationship with food at that time, and
Huh.
touch on carbs too.
Well, before seeing you, my relationship with food, like if I got stressed at work, I would eat.
Mhm.
And it wasn't like, like I didn't eat like I was a snacker. Like I think they would call me a snacker. Um, because I would have just an open bag of chips, an open bag of anything. And I would just constantly, I wasn't hungry, but I was stressed.
I
So
gotcha.
it was almost like a comfort, like, well, this will make me less stressed,
Mhm.
or this will give me more energy so that way I could do this project a little bit longer, not get weary. But it was never a good snack. It was never a healthy snack. It was always a bag of popcorn, a bag of chips. And I'm not really a chip person. It was more like a bag of chocolate candy, a bag of chocolate Reese's, something like that. I was the queen of buying almond M&Ms in my office. And everybody knew if you needed a little quick pick me up, Robin had some almond M&Ms and maybe 2 or 3 bags in her desk drawer just for safekeeping. So I felt like food was my comfort. I also would eat a lot just watching TV. I would sit down and I would try to just unwind and do something that I didn't have to think a lot for. So watch mindless TV and just snack. Again, wasn't hungry, but it was just something I did in conjunction with watching TV. No rhyme or reason, just would do it.
Yeah, yeah. And to those who are listening in, if you have any questions, any comments you want to post, definitely post throughout this interview, and we will respond to you. So definitely chime in. We want you to engage, even though this is recorded. We definitely want you to engage. And so thank you for sharing. Thank you for being honest and transparent about the stress eating, because that is real. The struggle is real. And I am not immune to it at all. And so it's very common for us to stress eat, emotionally eat. I was a procrastination eater, because it's like I had all these things I had to do. And I'm like, oh boy, where do I start? Let's get something to eat and figure it out. So, and it becomes habitual. It just becomes habit. And like you said, you're not hungry. And sometimes for me, did you feel this way? Sometimes it wasn't even satisfying. I was just like doing it just to do it. I'm like, yeah, it's definitely the struggle. And so what was when you were, we always try to reel it in. So we know we stress eat, and then we're trying to reel it in. And so what would you say some of your challenges were with portion control and cravings?
So portion control has never been my thing. I think I remember starting off with you and I had like grapes in my bag before I went to work. And I in my mind I'm like, oh, I'm doing good. I have grapes in my bag for a snack. It's not chips, it's not candy. I am great. And I remember you were like, no, it's like a certain amount of grapes. And I was like, what? You're like, yeah, they're larger grapes, maybe 10. And oh, there's a limit of how many, like I can't just eat whatever the amount I want. And you're like, no. So I have never been great with, and like the meat fitting in the palm of your hand and 3 ounces. And I've never been that girl. So that I've always, or I struggled with in the past. Portion control has never been my thing. And again, because I would eat directly out of the container, it's just was like a way of life.
And you're not the only one, because I had to learn it too. So it's not like you can only have, X amount of grapes. It's just a matter of understanding, well, how much of them are you eating in comparison to your day, in comparison to your body, in comparison to what your goals are, because I had to reel it back in. When I got that call that, oh, you need to lose 15, 20 pounds, I had to figure out, like, my portions were big, and I'm like, oh, wow, I need to cut back. And once you realize that it's too much for your body, then it's like, okay. So it was an eye opener, for me as well. It's just a matter of realizing how the calories add up. I think that's really what the bottom line is, because we think, oh, it's healthy, it's vegetables, it's like you said, it's grapes, it's fruit, unlimited, it's healthy. But it all has a cap. It all has a cap. And so in addition to the stress, do you think you had other triggers maybe that would trigger your food cravings sometimes?
Just, really any emotion. It wasn't like happy that I would eat, but if there was like a joyous occasion, sure, let's go out to dinner, let's go have drinks, let's, anything. It like surrounded food. And I just think food was probably a real comfort. I mean, there was times when, I've been married 20 years where there's down moments in that marriage, and food would comfort me. I was raising a teenager at the time, I guess, and a preteen. That was stressful, a teenage girl, and she was about to graduate, and that was super stressful.
Mhm.
But it was like happy moment, she would get overjoyed, and then it would be like, let's bring on the food. So really any emotion, I used to kid and say, I wish I was that person that would not eat when they were stressed out. Or
Yeah,
like there was two people, you ate or you didn't. I was like, why couldn't I have been the person that didn't eat anything when she should
right.
be
Right.
that? Yeah.
Most of us eat. How are your energy levels? How would you rate your energy levels back then?
So my energy level was horrible. And I had gotten so used to not having, and it was weird because I was exercising, but I would be exercising and then I would be like sluggish and then tired. And it was just weird because I eventually just, that was a way of life. I didn't even know I was feeling sluggish, that I was feeling tired because I was so used to feeling that way.
Mm.
And I remember part of it was the being anemic, and then part of it was just my diet was off. Um, but I remember when I started eating better, the the change, and it was like, wow, like I didn't realize I could feel this good and this, I have this amount of energy. I just didn't realize there was a difference because I had just gotten used to
Yeah,
not having the energy.
yeah. And that's a good point because a lot of people, we get used to it, we adapt, and then we think, okay, this is normal. And so, here I come along saying, oh, there's more gas in the tank. It's like, well, where? Because you're
Yep.
so used to it. How about sleep? Um, how was do you think you was getting enough sleep back then? Let's talk about that.
I remember and it not being a big deal that I didn't get enough sleep. I mean, I was working on like 6 hours of sleep, maybe 5.5 sometimes, but 6 hours is probably the norm for me. And again, I thought that was normal. Like I thought this is just kind of a part of adulthood. I'm still raising children. I'm still taking care of a household. I'm working full time. Like this,
Mhm.
this is how it's supposed to be. And
Yeah.
I just remember us having conversations about how long, striving to get the 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep and how that made a difference in how I felt as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember we had a conversation about you were like me at that time. You worked out first thing in the morning. And it was like, okay, well, I know I just had about 4 or 5 hours of sleep. It's going on like day three. Do I
Mhm.
sleep in or do I exercise? Remember that question? Remember that conversation?
Yep. Yep.
And I said, sleep.
Yeah.
And you
But
were like, what?
overcompensating, I would feel bad when I didn't work out because I knew my eating habits in the past were horrible. So I was again trying to exercise out the bad eating habits. And it was like you can't outrun the
Yeah.
bad diets.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, when we going off of so many hours of not sleeping and then we still try to push through, like at that time, Robin was running, I don't know, what you run like 3 miles, you were running.
yeah.
And that takes a lot out of you. And so you can risk injury, you can, just sluggish, you're not gonna really be able to put in, what you are trying to do because you're kind of sluggish because after several days of being sleep deprived, it affects your mood, it affects your your stamina, it affects your concentration. And so once you got to a point of once you get a taste of that 7 hours of sleep and then you don't have it for a couple of days, your body's like, oh no, we're not
Mhm.
doing this again. So, and we have those moments, because I have those moments too when things happen and you find yourself, okay, let me go to bed an hour later, then it comes 2 hours later, but it catches up, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Definitely catches up. Now let's talk about a lot of times people will try to do it alone. We will try to figure this thing out. I try to figure it out. How do I lower my blood pressure? How do I lose the weight? What do I need to do? And so you know, but sometimes we just need help, right? We need some help. And so what prompted you to finally reach out to me?
It was really like nothing was working. I think I remember it was something. I don't know if it was like, it wasn't a blog, but somebody had commented, I guess it was an existing client or a prior client, and they had mentioned you in a post, and I think it was on Facebook. And I remember thinking like, I know Sandra. Like I know Sandra. Like I could just ask her, like, what exactly does a nutritionist do? And what are your services? And what, so I remember then like seeking you out at church like the following Sunday and was like, I think I might just want to try it. Like, I don't know, like it couldn't possibly hurt anything, right? So I was like, I'm willing to try anything. So I was like, this might be the right way to go about it. Let me just give it a try and see if it works and see if it's something that, instead of it being like a diet, just being how I eat and how I maintain the rest of my life. So that's what prompted me. And that's what
Yeah.
made me want to like seek you out for those services.
Yeah. Was it something that was going on at that time? Was the blood pressure maybe still an issue? There was a weight going up, or?
It was still an issue. I was still doing the 2 meds at that point, but really in 2018, that was the year that we found out my stepdaughter was pregnant, and she wasn't like a teenager any longer, but she was freshly out of high school. So it was like, you're not ready for this. And that just brought on like a lot of stress. My husband wasn't happy about the decision or of her having a child. We weren't happy about her moving in with her boyfriend's parents. We just thought the whole situation was not a great situation. And I just remember feeling like, like I can't, I didn't see a light. I didn't see a way out. And so again, food was kind of the comfort. And then it was like, I can't continue to have food be the comfort because now I'm unhappy with myself because now I'm not fitting into anything. I'm not connecting on an intimate level with my husband because I don't feel good about myself. So I just was like all of those things compiled. And I think when I saw that post, I was like, I've got to try something new and something different.
Yes, yes. So thank you for being transparent, because that is real talk. Real talk. Because as women, if we don't like the way we look in the mirror, what we see, even though our husbands may love, baby, you look good. If we don't like it, then
Yeah.
it affects us. It affects us. We appreciate you complimenting us, but it affects us when we can't get our clothes on. We got to buy. I don't know about you, but it's many of. I'm not buying another size. I'm not going up. I refuse. Yep. I refuse to go up a size, and it's real. It's real. Do you wish you would have reached out sooner?
Absolutely. The headaches and there's a lot of emotions when you're trying Weight Watchers or a new program and it's not working. And then you're like, I've just wasted money. I've wasted time. I wasted energy and it didn't work. So now I'm at square one again. I don't like, where am I to go now? What am I to do now? So yes, I definitely wish that, I would have started earlier in my earlier 30s. I would have had a healthier, probably even in my 20s, because I started having children younger to just be healthier. I mean, I remember going through my first pregnancy and I was eating Popeyes, French fries, and biscuits on a daily basis. But I wish I would have done it then. My oldest son, my oldest son is 20. So I wish I would have done it 20 years ago, because that would have been helpful for teaching them how to eat and me just going and being healthier for a longer period of time.
Yeah. So how's your relationship with carbs changed? So with us, I know it was fearful. A lot of women are fearful of carbs because that's what you see.
Struggle with carbs and my relationship with carbs, because it's almost like you see it and you're like, nope, I'm not gonna go there because I can overindulge. So it's almost like every once in a while I have to catch myself and be like, it's okay. There's you have a formula. There's so many carbs you can have in the day. It's okay to have carbs, because I couldn't do the whole Atkins thing. My sister had tried that. I just had refused. So I did mine in like little doses. Like, I'm not gonna have no carbs today, or I'm not gonna have no carbs tomorrow. But I never did like the full Atkins diet. But I still struggle to this day, I really have to kind of think about what I'm eating when it comes to carbs and be like, it's okay if I have a certain amount of carbs each day. It's fine.
Yes, absolutely. And it comes from, it's the dieting mindset, because that's all you hear. No matter what diet is out there, that's the first thing they cut is carbs and dairy and, all these different things they cut out, and not recognizing that carbs is the cornerstone of your energy levels, your muscle growth and repair, and your immune system. But again, there's a certain amount for you, a certain amount for me. Everybody needs to have a certain amount, but it's almost like, carbs are not the enemy, but we just got to know how to make them work for you. So it's a challenge for everybody. And so I'm glad that you trusted me. I'm glad that you allowed me to say, okay, it's okay to do this. You're gonna lose. You're gonna lose, and because it is a big struggle. Because why would you not believe it? It's what you hear, and here I am coming along with one voice. Eat carbs. When everybody's saying don't. So about maybe 2 months in, or maybe 2.5 months in, you've lost 10 pounds, maybe a little bit more, and you go to the doctor, and you surprised me. So share with us that doctor's appointment. and
so I don't remember the day, but I remember like my reaction. I remember like how it went down. I couldn't tell you the year, I couldn't tell you the date, but I remember going into that doctor's appointment because again, it was every 90 days. I had to get medication refilled, and they would take the blood pressure. And for a while, my blood pressure had been good, and I don't know, I think too, it was the doctor that I had, but I had to be a self advocate and just say, and suggest to him, like, I really don't want to be on 2 medications. I would prefer to not be on any medication, but I would. And so he didn't really go for the whole, like, we're going to take you off all medications, which I would have loved, but I knew that wasn't going to work. So I was like, if we could just try going back to the original plan of taking the medication, one medication once a day, and just try it. And when I come back, I will monitor at home, because that was like a consistent, I had to still monitor at home. And I will monitor at home. And when I come back, if it's good, then I would really like to stay with just the one medication. And he was hesitant at first, but he never suggested that. So he was okay with me suggesting it. And he was like, okay, we can try it.
Okay.
And so we did. And I remember going back for my follow-up appointment and my blood pressure being good, and him like, you know what, we're just going to keep you off. Like, you've been consistent. You're saying your readings at home have been consistent. And so we're only going to require you to take the one medication. And I thought, that's amazing. Like, that's amazing. And so I was just happy that I, again, was not going to be one of those ladies that had the
polypharmacy going on.
Like, I know that time is coming, but I don't think it should be in my 30s. I really don't.
Yeah.
So I was just overjoyed that he listened to me, that I actually had a voice, because maybe if I had never suggested it, maybe I would have still been on 2 medications, but I suggested it. He went with it. We monitored it, and it stayed good. I mean, until this day, and this is almost 4 years later, I'm still on just the one medication. So, I mean, it was a great and happy moment that I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have to take that second medication.
Yes. And I was happy for you too, because I remember you were going every 3 months, and we started at the beginning of that 3-month period. And so it wasn't quite 3 months. It was like that 2-month mark. And you had lost, and you were still monitoring at home. And he probably would have, because what would have happened if you would have stayed on the 2 meds, and your blood pressure would have just been going lower and lower and lower, to the point where, it wouldn't have made sense to stay on 2. So that's really good. That I was happy. I was very happy. Those are the victories. Like, I like to hear that more than weight loss, because that's huge. That is huge. And 4 years later, you are still holding it, and it's not about perfection now, is it? Because we're not perfect, right? You still have your chocolate almonds, you know, M&Ms, and that is perfectly fine.
Triggers. And so I also know if I can't control like my cravings once I start having it, then I shouldn't buy it. So I know my triggers of almond M&Ms. I don't buy those because that's a trigger for me. But there's other things I do indulge in. And I don't know what year, I don't know if you do it every year, but I just remember you saying like for Thanksgiving and Chris, like, okay, it's one meal. It's one day. You don't need to, and I used to like, you get to like the fourth quarter of the year and you're like, oh, it's Halloween. It is Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, it's New Year's, all of that wrapped in one. I can eat bad for 3 months. And it's like, nope, nope, not necessary. And so every year I think about that and I'm like, Robin, you don't have to indulge the entire week of Thanksgiving. You can indulge and get your favorite foods that one day and let that be it. And then that way I feel like I'm not missing out. I'm still enjoying it. But I don't need to have the pre-meal, the meal, and the leftovers for multiple days. Right?
Yes.
I don't need a whole sweet potato pie. I just need a slice.
Yes. Yay! And you cruised. I didn't even share this. You went on a cruise and you had a birthday. And I remember you was a little nervous about the cruise.
Yes, because I think it was like fairly early and it might have been like a few weeks after we had started. And I was like, oh, this is gonna mess everything up because I had never been on a cruise before. And I would just remember people saying, yeah, you overeat on a cruise. And I remember you're like, just go take it meal by meal. You don't have to overeat. You can taste things, but you don't have to overeat, and you don't have to eat everything that comes in front of you. All right. And I just remember coming back and I had stayed the same. And I remember you said, that's the goal. The goal isn't to lose while you're there. The goal is to come back the same. And I came back and I was the same weight. I hadn't gained any, I hadn't lost any. And I was ecstatic, like, oh, I survived. I won.
Yes, because that's too much. That is way too much pressure. Because I think it was almost like I saw the sigh of relief on your face. I'm like, we're not trying to lose weight on this cruise. Just enjoy yourself and don't pop. Just don't pop. Because when you stay the same weight, you've eaten more than weight loss. So it's not like you didn't indulge. It's not like you didn't enjoy. It's not like you didn't have any liberties, but you just didn't overdo it to where you came back 5 pounds, 10 pounds more. So that's great. And again, if any of our listeners has any comments, definitely chime in. Comments or questions, post. And so sure, it's been 4 years, so just kind of, and you have been maintaining for the most part. I think it's maybe 5 pounds, give or take, which is awesome. I call that success. So you did not gain it all back. So just kind of share, life now and just kind of how you manage.
Life now, I'm still exercising. I'm not running as much. I'm doing more of a cycling class, probably for like the last year and a few months. So my exercise is still around 4 days a week. I typically don't do more than 4 days a week. Sleep is super important to me. People know, okay, if I'm waking up at 5:30 to exercise in the morning, then that means I'm going to bed I'm in bed ready to fall asleep in the 9 o'clock hour. Like, you can call me old, you can call me whatever name you want, but I know I'm about to get me at least 7 hours of sleep. So that has stayed consistent. I think my food choices and options, that's always been a struggle for me, but I now know, I would say Italian food is like that's my food. And so I know, what, I don't need tons and tons and tons of pasta, portion control, also have something green, a salad with it. That's a good
protein. Yep, all of that helps. Yeah.
So I remember getting that recipe from you with my own pasta sauce. I still use that recipe to this day with my vegetables, my tomato paste, my tomato sauce. Like, there's some things that's just like, I know that I have to stay on top of. but there's just some things that are second nature. And so food to me has
Good.
always been the thing that I have to stay on top of. So
Yes. Yes.
it's something that I have to mentally think about. And so I think about that when I'm thinking about meals for the week, my lunches for the week. I'm not nearly going out as much as I used to. Even with the pandemic, working from home, it was like, let me plan my, my salmon, my 3 ounces of salmon, my greens, my, my carb. It was, it just, I've just been in a better routine the
Good.
last few years
Good.
based on
Good.
my visits with you. It's more of a conscious effort versus I give up. I'm just going to exercise my way out of eating this chocolate cake. Like I've learned if there's a better way of doing it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's good. And over time, it does become a lifestyle. It's I tell people it's not an overnight thing. It's not a being perfect. It's not about being perfect. It's just being consistent and trying, and you keep doing something different the next day. And eventually you find your routine. You find what works for you. And so, any words of wisdom for our listeners, who are in the position that you were in, like maybe they were tired all the time, they felt stuck, they were frustrated, they like, okay, I'm doing all this stuff. Why isn't the weight coming off? Why? Or blood pressure for some reason. Some people's blood sugar. What advice would you have?
Just don't give up. It's not like you said, it's not an overnight thing. Be open to meeting with you, listening to your suggestions. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but I was not a dairy girl whatsoever. Okay. And you suggested milk in the morning, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? And then you said yogurt. And yogurt, what? I don't even like yogurt or the consistency of yogurt. And I just remember I had to just be open to trying something different to get a different result. And so as long as people stay open, I think that they will be able to find their way, and not do it alone. You try to buddy up with people that have the same bad habits as you. That's not necessarily as helpful as you think it might be.
Yeah, good. That's a good point.
I need to obviously link up with somebody better that has better habits, because I can't feed off somebody else that has bad habits like I do. We're going to feed off each other and still have bad habits. So, being open to, a new way of doing things, would just probably be my biggest thing, and not go at it alone.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. Definitely good advice. And Robin's been introduced to chocolate milk, so that's also alternative. So she was very happy about that.
Yes, that's much better than just regular old. And I think the difference too, I remember, I think I was doing 2%, and you were like, there's not much difference between the whole milk and the 2%. And I was like, really? There's not? And you're like, no.
I had to learn that too, because we grow up, we go from whole milk to 2%. Yep. Yeah, that's very true. You want for cholesterol purposes, long term. That's what you want to do, the low fat. And then and when with the chocolate milk, think about in school systems. I mean, not all kids drink white milk, so they have chocolate milk. I know once upon a time they had strawberry milk. So I don't know if they still have that. But those are alternatives. If that's the way to get it in to do the body good, then that's the way we get it in. But thank you, Robin. I thank you so much for your transparency, your honesty, because this was real talk. People need to hear this, because as a lot of times people feel like they are dealing with this alone, or they're struggling with this alone, and we all have very similar struggles. So I thank you for being here today. And so again, those who want to chime in with any posts, any questions, any comments, definitely chime in. And I want to thank each of you for tuning in today with It's All About Choices, Nutrition and Weight Loss. And again, thank you, Robin, for tuning in. Yes. And remember to keep a positive mindset. Positive self-talk goes a long way with cultivating and maintaining a healthy lifestyle and self-care habits that last a lifetime. So tune in next week, same time, same handle. Bye for now. Have a great rest of your day, and blessings and healthy regards.